when a group of hobos stumble across the remains of a crashed UFO. They have no idea they're about to live out a real-life E.T. adventure. And then we take a look at the story of a family that's moving out. As they're packing up the belongings and saying goodbye to the place they've spent so many years in, something unusual happens, which forces them to ask the question, was the place they called home actually a portal to the beyond? Today on Dead Rabbit Radio. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Dead Rabbit Radio. I'm your host, Jason Carpenter. I'm having a great day. I hope you guys are having a great day too. I hope you guys are having tons of fun doing whatever you're doing. We got a lot of stuff to cover today, so first off, walking into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, everyone get on your feet and give a loud round of applause for our newest Patreon supporter, Vappy. Woohoo, yeah, Vappy's walking on into Dead Rabbit Radio Command, doing a couple bows, breakdancing a little bit, showing off. If I have to be honest, Vappy is someone else who started supporting the Patreon during the 2-week break, so it's been a while to get you your shout out, so I appreciate your patience. Vappy, you're going to be our captain, our pilot this episode. If you guys can't support the show through the Patreon, or you can't buy the merch, or don't have money for that type of stuff, it's totally fine. It really, really is. Just help spread the word about Dead Rabbit Radio. That helps out so much. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know. Dead Rabbit Radio is your favorite paranormal show. Vappy, let's go ahead and get this party started. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the keys to the, I just saw Furiosa, so let's go with one of our desert vehicles. I'm going to go ahead and toss you the key to the Dead Rabbit Dune Buggy. Everyone climb on board as Vappy powers this bad boy up. Vappy, we're leaving behind Dead Rabbit Radio Command. Drive us all the way out to Florida. Kicking up dust over those dunes. War boys in quick pursuit. Darth Vader is, we're out in Florida and we're about to meet this group of, it's a combination. So we're headed back to the 1950s. We're in Naples, Florida, to be specific, and there is this migrant camp. There's this camp of workers, and it's a mixture of migrant workers from different countries, hobos, and then just general, I don't want to say riffraff, but just people who are kind of down on their luck. They can't get a job, so they're working at this migrant camp. And this is a thing, right? We have migrant camps up in Hood River that get workers from all over the world to come up here and pick fruits. They have those in Florida as well. So you have this migrant camp back in the 1950s, and we're about to meet this young girl. We're going to call her Angelica. It's not a real name. But Angelica is there with her family, and they're working at this migrant camp. When all of a sudden, one of the workers comes running from the beach and goes, "Guy, that'd be dope." I mean, listen, as a migrant worker, it doesn't sound like that much fun. But if it's next to the beach, you're like, "Oh, all right, break time." You're all swimming in the water. Calling sick to work for all your jellyfish stings. This guy comes running back to the camp. He's like, "Guys, oh my God, you won't believe what I just found at the beach. Come with me. I'm not even going to tell you guys, because I don't even know what I found yet. Come on, guys, let's run. So Angelica and her family and everyone else ran to the beach to find out what this worker saw. And he points, and a short distance from the beach itself, I mean, they can wade out there to take a look at it. It's not super far away. But they don't even have to get that close to realize kind of what they're looking at. It's a crashed aircraft. And the guy goes, "This thing, I was standing here at the beach. I was working. I was looking for clams. We're clam diggers, right?" They're like, "No, we pick oranges. Get back to work." He's, "Oh, okay, yeah, I forgot." But anyways, I was standing at this beach, and I saw this thing fall from the sky, and it crashed into the water. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. I ran back and got you guys. See what's going on. Now, Angelica said what this was, I mean, they're trying to piece it all together. It fell from the sky, sure, because the way that it had crashed into the ground, but it didn't have any doors or windows. So it wasn't a conventional flying vehicle, like a plane or a helicopter or something like that. The other thing that they noticed was a body. That might be the first thing you notice. There's a body floating in the water next to this thing. Now, she doesn't describe it as an actual, like, disc. She doesn't give a real description of what the crashed UFO looked like. That's what they're going to find out it is very quickly. But definitely wasn't a plane. This body that's kind of floating slightly in the water. This is close to the beach. Some of the workers, right? You got these two hobos. They're like, guys, let's go. That's a body. Let's go. Come on, guys. Let's go see what's going on. And they wade out there and they take a look at it. Humanoid is the best way to describe it. They clearly can tell that this wasn't a human, but it had 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. However, it was very tall and lanky. It was wearing a helmet, almost like a spaceman's helmet, but the visor was gone. So they could see this creature's face. But creature's not really even the right term, because what they're looking at is a mechanical face. It's a robot floating next to this ship. Now, these hobos, they pick it up. They pick the body up to carry it back to shore. And the first thing they realize is it's very light. It's definitely a lot lighter than it should be, as big as it is, and considering it's probably robots, the heaviest of all living things. They pick it up, they're like, wow, this dead thing is pretty light. He's all bench pressing it, he's all, well, look at me, guys, he's spinning on his finger. I'm the strongest man in the world. They bring this body ashore, and they drop it down to the ground, and the people are looking at it, it's dead. Whatever it was, it's not alive anymore. Maybe if you could argue it was never alive, it was a robot or an android, but it's conversation for a philosopher. This fallen astronaut, this visitor from another world, crash landed on our planet and died. At this point, the migrant workers and the hobos and everyone is just kind of looking at this thing, and that's when they hear someone call off, hey guys, come over here, look! And a couple of the workers went over there to where the dude was yelling, guys, over here, look. And he points to a pile laying in the grass near the beach, leading off into the mainland. What he found was an empty spacesuit. It was the same type of suit that the dead guy was wearing, the dead robot was wearing. This suit was just kind of piled up on the ground, like someone took it off in a hurry and then ran from the beach. A few of the workers say, you know what, okay, this is clearly, I don't know how many people here watch the Jetsons, but this is clearly space aliens or future or something like that. Let's try to get into the ship. Maybe there's more survivors, they say out loud, but really they're just thinking of all the magical inventions they can find in there. They begin to try to break into the craft. But since there's no doors, there's no windows, they don't even know where to start. They're just kind of looking at the thing, trying to find some way in, when all of a sudden, this army helicopter roars over the area and is now hovering above them. And that's when trucks full of army soldiers begins to drive down the beach towards this crashed aircraft, and soldiers are jumping out. Everyone here, stay away from the craft, And they're like, whoa, we got it, bro, we got it. And they're like walking out of the water. The army's like, we now have jurisdiction over this area. Everybody back to camp now. Okay, I mean, you can't really argue with the entire U.S. Army. The hobos and the migrant workers and everyone went back to the worker camp. And the military followed them there, followed them back to the camp, and basically set up a perimeter around the camp. And said no one is going to leave this camp until we give orders saying you can. And the foreman of the camp told his workers, he goes, just do what they say. That's probably the path of least resistance. Just do what they say. Because if this is something, either it's alien or top secret technology or whatever, these guys mean business. What's it to them if they shoot a couple hobos on a sunny afternoon in Florida, right? They just chalk it up to national security. The foreman says, just do what they say. Don't make any trouble. And at one point, one of the army officers told the assembled crowd of workers, because they're basically just being held in this area at this point, says, no one can tell anyone about what happened here. But I'll be honest, even if you did, no one would believe you. You're a bunch of drunks. You're a bunch of hobos. Some guy's like, oh, that hurts my feelings. He's like, oh, I've been clean for 3 months. Okay, maybe not you. You're not a drunk, but you're still a hobo. And no one's going to believe you guys. No one's going to believe you guys what you saw here today, so don't even try it. Also, you're surrounded by the army, so, we could just kill you. Angelica's trapped in this camp along with her parents, and they can't work. They're all just kind of sitting here. At one point, Angelica's sitting there. She's got nothing to do, and she hears a voice from behind her say, are they looking for me? And she spins around, and she sees, standing behind her, somebody wearing a blanket. Like somebody with a blanket over their head and kind of wrapped around them. And she looks right at it. This being has a robotic face. And it's staring at her, and it says, are they looking for me? It's tall, it towers over her, she's terrified, but also a little sympathetic because she knows that this thing is scared, that it's hiding from the military. This is another passenger aboard this ship. She said the way that it spoke, it had a robotic face, but its lips would move as it talked. However, there was a delay with the lips. So you would hear it talk, and then you'd see the lips move shortly after it. And she tells it, yes, they are looking for you. We're all trapped here. We can't leave. They are looking for you. You need to stay away from the military. You need to stay away from the army men. So she goes, yeah, the military's looking for you. You have to keep your head down, which is kind of hard because you're tall, and kind of hard because your face is a robot. Can't really blend in, but you need to stay out of sight. Well, the military keeps this area surrounded, and they are looking, because they also find this other suit. They believe that there's something else in the area, so they're looking for that. They're trying to retrieve what they can from the crashed UFO. They take the other alien, the deceased alien's body. After 2 days, they say, okay, we're going to end our cordon of this migrant worker camp. We got what we need here. It's time to pull out, guys. But the army was just kind of letting the migrant workers go back to their jobs. They weren't saying, well, there's an alien loose, we're just going to leave you guys to it. They're still looking for the alien, but as they were starting to clean up the main part of their reclamation operation, the alien showed back up. This tall dude, this tall robotic guy is walking by, and these hobos see him. And they're like, dude, get down, the army's going to look for you. Are they still looking for me? And they're like, why would they stop? You're an alien. You're an alien from beyond the stars. And they know that they need to get this alien somewhere safe. It's funny because really this is the story of outsiders helping outsiders. And to get that quote right, because I think this does add some context to it, when I said that the soldier said, no one will believe you, who's going to believe a bunch of hobos and drunks, the full quote was, quote, who would believe hobos, drunks, and uneducated Mexicans. Unquote. So there's not a not a way to win the hearts and minds of the people you are currently surrounding. That left a bad taste in everybody's mouth. So of course, if this alien is scared, he's not hurting the hobos, he's not hurting the migrant workers. They see they have a shared enemy, which is the army, which are being kind of big jerks at this point. So the hobos say, we need to help this robot get out of here. We have to put all of our hobo skills together to help get this alien robot free of army control, because who knows what they'll do to him. He's alive. Torture him, disassemble him, who knows. So they do. They use their combined hobo skills. First off, they get him a big hooded cloak. Then they throw a bunch of raggedy hobo clothes on him. And you have a hobo fashion expert. She's like, I don't know. There's 2 little lice on that shirt sleeve. And people are brushing their hair and more lice is coming off. She's like, magnifico. That is the right amount of lice. He clearly looks like a hobo. And someone goes, but he's missing that je ne sais quoi, that thing that makes a hobo a hobo. They took alcohol and poured it all over his clothes. So he reeked. Some guy's just leaning down underneath him. He's all drinking, and he's like, I am a drunk. Give me your dribbles. He's drinking the alcohol is dripping down this robot's body. They cover him in alcohol for 2 reasons. One, so he clearly has the drunk hobo aesthetic. Secondly, because this guy was tall and kind of robotic, he walked weird. So they go, just make him into a tall drunk guy. If anyone sees that he's walking weird, they'll just figure, pew-wee, that guy's drunk, man. He is so stinky. And so they did. They poured alcohol all over him. And eventually this bus shows up because, they're migrant workers. They're moving from area to area. And these hobos are like, hey, guy, hey, Johnny. They just named the robot. Johnny 5 will be your name. Johnny, let's get on this bus. And the robot's like, are they still looking for me? He's all talking like a robot. They're all, shut up, get on the bus. And he gets on the bus, and the hobos get on the bus, and the door shuts, and Angelica watches the bus drive away from the army search area to destinations unknown. Angelica said the next day her and her family left the camp as well on a different bus to head out to another migrant work area. This was posted on phantomsandmonsters.com. Great website. I recommend people check it out every single day. Love it. It was posted by the son of Angelica. I guess who sent it to Lon Strickler, the guy who does Phantoms and Monsters, goes by the name T-Bear. And this was a story about his mother. His mother had told him about that time an alien crashed near their migrant work camp. It's a fun story. It's very E.T.-ish, right? Alien kind of walking around like this is barely E.T. I thought he's going to fly a bicycle or eat Reese's Pieces or something. It's only E.T. because they put a cloak on him. Yeah, but sometimes that's enough. Also, I will say there is a creepy conclusion to the story. I don't know if the author really meant to make it sound so creepy. But he said, T-Bear, when he was posting this, said, those who took the alien, like that bus and those hobos who got on that bus, drove away, he said they were never seen again. So you go, Jason, that's kind of the nature of migrant work, right? It's not like you're working at Kinko's and you keep showing up at the same place all the time, pulling an 8-hour shift. Migrant work, you go from one area, you work there, and the season's over, you can end up on the other side of the country. Or at the very least, a couple towns away, a couple states away, maybe. That's kind of the nature of migrant work. That's true. But also at the same time, if you had a group of migrant workers, I'm sure most of the migrant workers up here know each other. Because they would, I assume, I don't know much about migrant work. I shouldn't make these vast conclusions, but I think you'd get to know each other the same way. Like maybe you just know of each other, or just the way that camps work out. You may work with someone for a couple months during a certain season and then not see them again for another year or two until chance brings you guys back working at the same job. They were never seen again, which you could go, well, it's because, they're migrant workers and they went to somewhere totally different. And the alien eventually started a new life walking through America, smelling like a hobo, visiting town after town, learning about our culture. It's also possible that the military caught up to them. The military, they knew there was another person there, another crashed alien survivor, because they found the suit. It's not like they would just stop looking. It's possible that they eventually found the robot, found the hobos who were hiding them, and took all of them prisoner. The robot to commit unspeakable crimes against, to torture, to dismantle, to experiment on, and then the hobos just because they knew too much. Or it's an uplifting story in the vein of E.T. In the vein of E.T. E.T. finally phoned home and left the planet Earth. I do not like the movie E.T., by the way. I think that is one of the dumbest science fiction movies, big budget science fiction movies ever made. I don't know how many times I saw it. My brother liked it like an idiot, and my friends liked it. It's dumb. It's so boring. It's not cool at all. E.T.'s lame. The movie's lame. It's all bad. I'm not a fan of E.T. I call it P.E.T. because I pee all over it. I hate that movie. But anyways, Fabio, let's go ahead and toss you the keys to the world-famous Carpenter copter. We're leaving behind Florida. I really hope the robot alien did survive his encounter, made friends with some hobos, and eventually got rescued by his own people and brought back out into space. But most likely they all got captured by the U.S. government and to this day are being held captive. That's very depressing. But Vappy, go ahead and fire up the Carpenter copter. We are leaving behind Florida. Why don't you fly us all the way out to New Jersey? Flying all the way out to New Jersey. Specifically, we're headed out to Garfield, New Jersey. The town that loves lasagna and hates Mondays. We're headed out to Garfield, New Jersey. The year is 1985. We're about to meet this young man. We're going to call him John. We don't have his real name, but we're going to meet this young man named John. He's 17 years old. Him, his brother, and their parents, they lived in this Victorian home, but only part of it. Only part of it. This home was built back in 1906, so it was a very beautiful old home, if you like that style. Some people don't. But it's a home built a long time ago. They're living in it, but it's basically divided into two different living areas. They lived in the upstairs portion of the home, and then downstairs was where another family was living. But now the owner of the building is actually selling it, and they're going to tear down this Victorian home and put up an apartment building. And John and his family, they're not bitter about it or anything like that. Sometimes you just got to move on. Sometimes you don't have much control over those situations. You'll find another place. The world works that way. There's always an answer for every problem. John and his family, they're going to be moving out. The tenants who lived underneath them had already moved out, and John and his family were actually helping clean up the downstairs portion of this home. They're helping move out stuff that had been left behind by the previous family. Cleaning everything out. Now, on this particular day in 1985, John and his dad, they're going to move this big chair. This big upholstered chair. Like a big comfy chair that you can just sit in and kind of sink into. So John and his dad go, let's get ready to move this chair. Come on, we're going to reach down, grab it by the legs, and on the count of 3, let's lift it. 1, 2, 3. Lift, John, lift. Ugh. And they're lifting this chair up. And then all of a sudden, John's dad begins screaming, ah, ah, and he lets go of his side of the chair. And it's totally off balance. John can't hold it up his own. The chair kind of falls to the ground. John has to let go of his end. Thumps all 4 legs on the floor. And John's watching his dad hold his hand and go, ow, oh my God, what was that? Oh. And John's dad, let's call him Paul. I'm tired of keep saying John's dad. Paul, who is John's dad, you're like, that's more confusing. Paul goes, my hand. And John walks over and goes, Dad, what's the matter? And he looks. His father has a slowly growing welt on his hand. And Dad goes, something just burned me. When I picked up that chair, something burned my hand. And John clearly can see this welt appear. He said it was about the size of a 50-cent piece. Oh, jeez, man. And John and Paul are looking at this chair and they go, what? I mean, we got to move it, right? We said we would help. We can't move everything out, then leave this red hot chair sitting there. They don't really want to pick it up again. Paul goes, dude, we should see what caused this horrible injury so it doesn't happen again. They end up flipping the chair over. And it was a big chair. It had the 4 wooden legs, and at the bottom of each leg, it had that smooth metal button that helps it kind of slide around on the ground if you need it. We've all seen those, that metal button at the base of these legs on this chair. And the buttons were about the size of a 50-cent piece. And Paul's looking at it, and he touches one of them, and it's nothing, right? Just a little piece of metal. It touches another one, nothing. Then he touches one, specifically the one that he was holding onto when it burnt him. He touched that metal button. Ow! John, check this out. Touch it. Touch it, son. Touch it. No. It's hot to the touch. Like, not just warm, not like it's been out in the sunlight, like searing pain, permanent blemishes on my skin. Touch it, son. The other 3 metal nubs were all normal, but this particular one was hot to the touch, searing hot. They do have to move the chair, and eventually they do. They probably just put it on a wheelbarrow and wheel it out. And they're cleaning up the rest of the downstairs area. But what happened never really left their minds. They go, that was the weirdest thing. We have to figure out what caused that. Because we're here, we can probably figure it out. Was it some next to is there a hot water pipe, like right underneath the floor? Like, what could it have been? So, it's still going to be a while before they have to move out. It's still going to be a while before the house is torn down. So, they start to try to figure out what could be going on. And they're really thinking about this logically. The first thing they think of is a wiring issue. So they're looking under the carpet. They don't see any exposed wires. Okay. Maybe there's something underneath the floorboards. Somehow the heat is coming up, creating an electrical spark or something. I don't know. So they go down to the basement and they're looking up at the first floor, which is the ceiling to them, where that chair was, and they don't see anything that would generate that much heat there either. When they did move the chair, they retested after a while, they retested touching the metal nubs. All 4 of them were cool to the touch. So they believe whatever it was wasn't the chair. The chair was just the conductor. Maybe it's something in the house itself. And over the next days, over the next weeks, they're trying to figure out what this could have been. It's not all they do. They still had to go to school and work. The kid's like, John's like, I don't need to go to high school today. My science class is being held at home. He goes, we would run experiments. We'd try to figure out what it was. One of them was that he took a compass, and if you put it over where that spot was, where that leg of the chair was that got so hot, if you put the compass over that spot, the compass would move 25 degrees off course. But then you move it out of that range and it goes back to pointing correctly. Move it back over it, it is 25 degrees off course again. So something magnetic that's causing this. They also start to realize, they didn't live downstairs. They didn't spend much time downstairs. And this chair had been sitting here for God knows how long. But now that the chair had been moved and now that they're kind of walking around the area, when you walked through that area, it felt hotter. And just a little beam of heat. It's not like you'd be taking off your shirt, you're all sweaty, but it felt hotter. Now, you figure that could be psychosomatic, right? Because they know there's something generating heat in this area. They don't know what it is or what the mechanism is. I think it would be hard to determine, hey, when you're standing in this area, you can feel more warmth, but it's only the size of a 50-cent piece. Maybe they were holding their hands over it for a prolonged period of time. Whatever the case was, John said they started to notice that the area was hotter than other places. Also, they go, wait a second, so if the basement, we don't know what's causing this, but it could be something coming from underneath the ground, and it was warming up, really heating up this chair, this metal thing on the chair. And now that the chair's gone, we're saying we can feel the heat. Let's go upstairs and see if there's any anomalies in this exact same spot on the second floor. So they go up there, and what they realize is where that 50-cent sized beam that's shooting from, they assume somewhere in the basement, from underneath the floorboards at least, shooting up, where it would be interacting with their residence on the second floor, was right where their television was. And they go, okay, let's try and move the television set. Let's put on oven mitts before we do it. They do move the television set, and it's not registering anything. It's not particularly hot. Nothing is causing searing pain. However, they notice in a small area that's directly above where this chair was on the second floor, the carpeting looks a little warped. But that's it. Nothing drastic, nothing that they could point to say, well, this definitely is carrying over to the second floor. It might be manipulating the carpet. It could just be the fact that we've had this heavy television set. This is back in the 1980s. Television sets were so heavy, it's possible that it was just that. So they're trying to figure this out. They can't really get an answer. Something is having a reaction to something else. But they've kind of exhausted all of their attempts to figure out what it was. There's no hot water pipe running by. There's no exposed wires. They do sense that a little bit of heat in the area. There's definitely that measurable compass issue, being off by 25 degrees, electromagnetic field shooting up. They can't figure it out. And remember, there is a time limit. Eventually they will be moving out. The place will be destroyed. An apartment building will be put up. But they still want to figure this out, but it's more of a hobby at this point, right? They're not afraid of the house bursting into flames. It's just a weird thing. And they're trying to figure it out, and they can't. And then one day, John goes, oh my God. Dad, I totally forgot about this. It's weird, because it's probably not something you would ever forget, but in the chaos of life, especially, given the circumstances, he goes, Dad, back in 1979, back when he was only 11 years old, John was in the basement. In the basement, there was this small workshop, and John was down there just goofing off, building things, the boys do. Give him a bag of nails and a couple blocks of wood. Go nuts, kid. John goes, back when I was 11 years old, I was in the basement in that little workshop area. And I saw something. I saw something down there. I look, and standing in the basement with me. Standing may not even be the right word, but let me describe this. In the basement with me, I saw a man. Wasn't Dad. It wasn't you, Dad. It wasn't my brother. I've never seen this guy before. He was in the basement, and he was dressed up like he was an old miner. He had on one of those workers' hat, like a hard hat. And I'm in the basement, and I look, and I see him, and he's holding a flashlight, and he's running as fast as he can. But he doesn't move. John said the entire apparition lasted only a second. Imagine if you only saw someone running as fast as they can towards you for just a second. He could see the movement, and then it was gone. Not only could he see the movement, though, John said the look on this man's face was sheer terror. He was scared for his life, and he was running as fast as he could, and it was like a blink. It was like a flash, a moment in time. I saw him for 1 second running towards me, and then he was gone. John's in the basement in the little workshop area when he sees this man running towards him. And looking back on it now, John says, where that man was for just that second, where he was directly beneath where that old chair sat. Where that man manifested was right where the heat beam would have been in the basement. It's a fascinating story. This was posted online by someone going by the name Electropithecus. It's a fascinating story. I love stuff like this. I absolutely love stuff like this because what it is a anomaly that is being studied. And what makes it even more interesting to me, I mean, at this point, the building has been destroyed. The apartment complex is in place. We don't have an exact address for it. I mean, I want to go check out this apartment complex, see if this phenomenon's still here. But what I love about this story is the phenomenon is being investigated as a neutral phenomenon. And I'm not saying that it's not being a skeptic versus a ghost hunter. What I'm saying is that when John and his dad first started looking into it, they didn't immediately assume it was a ghost. They had no idea what was going on. In fact, they were looking at it from a very pragmatic point of view. And before John remembered the ghost story, and I don't know if he even had told his dad this story before. This is something we talk about all the time on this show. A lot. It's the last 747 who sends me stuff regularly. I really appreciate it. They just sent me over another story that's kind of the same thing. What happens is you have people experience paranormal phenomenon in their house and they don't tell anyone else. And they think it's just them. And then years later, that was kind of like the story we covered yesterday too, with the ventriloquist dummy in the refrigerator trying to burn down a house. If that episode sounds madcap to you, I'll put it in the show notes. It's quite wild, but a lot of times we have these paranormal... I talk about my paranormal phenomenon, but there is a lot of stuff that I don't talk about. Not out of privacy reasons or anything like that. Some of it I don't think is particularly interesting when set against the pantheon of other paranormal stories. Even other paranormal stories that I've experienced. There are other things that I've had happen to me that I was like, that's not interesting to talk about. But I think a lot of people don't talk about it because they're afraid, especially if you're in a house, right? Imagine if John goes, Dad, I just saw a ghost in the basement. You know, other than getting picked on by his brother, right? His brother's going to make fun of him. No one's going to believe him. No one's going to believe him that he really saw a ghost in the basement. And then it's just like this big thing. And it's just better to keep your mouth shut. Now, I'm not saying it's better to keep your mouth shut. I'm saying from that point of view. I remember when I was at high school in woodshop class. I hate woodshop. You're making me a wooden bunny rabbit right now. You're like, oh. I love woodcraft. I love other people doing it, but I didn't enjoy woodshop at all. Might have actually been automotive, which I enjoy even less. I love watching cars race around. I can spend a good Sunday afternoon watching NASCAR, but I don't know anything about cars. I don't really care to know anything about cars. I saw a UFO, middle of the day. my seat. I always like to sit up front near the door so I can just kind of come and go as I please. I was looking out the door back at like 94, right? I was looking out the door in a beautiful blue sky and I saw a cube. Out in the sky. It was just hovering there. It was far off. It wasn't a kite or anything like that. But it was big because as far off as I could see it, I could still make out that it was this metallic cube. And it was stationary for quite a while. And I remember I didn't have any friends in that class. Nobody particularly liked me, and I didn't care for them either. And I'm watching this thing, and I almost said, "Look, a UFO!" But I didn't. And I just watched it. And I thought to myself, I go, if I had been in a different class, one of the classes where I had friends, I would be like, "Oh my God, guys, what is that?" And maybe one of them could have said, "Oh, that's this, that, or the other thing." Maybe someone could have explained that, no, that's not a UFO. Haven't you seen the Air Force now has flying foxes? Turn around. That student has a robot face. He's like, "There's no such things as UFOs." I remember thinking to myself as I'm watching it, I kind of was like, if I was in another class, I would totally disrupt the whole class. Teacher's teaching a lesson. I was like, "There's an alien. There's an alien." But I was in woodshop class, and I go, if I was in one of the classes with my friends, like journalism or drama or English or something like that, I'd point it out. But none of these people like me. None of these students like me. The teacher doesn't even like me. And I don't like any of that. The teacher was fine. I didn't have a personal problem with the teacher. He didn't like me, but I didn't have a problem with him. But I didn't have any friends in that class. I didn't like any of the kids. They didn't like me. And I remember watching this UFO. And it was up there for a couple minutes. For quite a while. And then it just got smaller and smaller and smaller and disappeared. So I understand not telling stories, right? I understand not running upstairs and being like, "Dad, I just saw a ghost downstairs." Because at the very least, your dad may say, "Well, you're not allowed down there anymore if you're going to be scared of ghosts." "No, I swear it's a ghost." If you can't go to sleep tonight, John, because you're in the basement and you thought you saw a ghost, that you're not allowed to worship. So it was a clue, though, to what this beam could have been. He remembered that, which makes the story to me, if they started off looking for a ghostly explanation, I don't think they would have done as many tests. And sometimes just by running these tests, you can rule out the more skeptical answers. And really, it comes down to, what is this thing? A scientific anomaly, a place in Earth where things don't work the way they're supposed to, that's unique and unusual. But the fact that this might actually be connected to an apparition below it in the basement, and this heat was always being generated, this chair was constantly getting hotter, and it's not like it would ever burst into flames or anything like that, but definitely don't want to pick it up. Did the ghost cause the heat beam? Did the heat beam cause the ghost? Was there a worker in that area long before that house was built, and they died in the basement? And instead of their ghost going to the afterlife, it manifested in this area? You know what? I know I got to wrap this episode up, but I don't think so. I don't think that they built this. I mean, think about it. If the worker was here before the house was built, we're talking 1906. Did they even have flashlights back then? What's an even creepier thought is that this worker died somewhere else, and his soul got sucked up into this vortex. Like, he may have died somewhere else in the city, somewhere else in the state, maybe even country, running from something. Maybe it was something conventional like an explosion or a cave-in in a mine. I don't know why I keep thinking all he had was a flashlight. Not everyone who has a flashlight works in a mine, but you know what I mean? He has a hard hat, an old-timey hard hat, and a flashlight. You think, did he die conventionally in an accident, or was there a supernatural force chasing him that killed him? That look of fear on his face? Could be conventional, could be supernatural. He could have died really anywhere, and he got sucked into this vortex. Because we don't understand what causes a ghost to do what they do. We don't really know why they haunt particular locations, over other locations. Some ghosts can haunt multiple locations, like the ghost of Abraham Lincoln is spotted in different places. The ghost, I think, of Cary Grant is spotted in multiple locations, places that were important to him. We don't understand these things. A lot of times we talk about these things like they're so written in stone. We just don't know. Is it possible for a ghost to move from location to location? Maybe. We think that might be true. Is it possible to force a ghost from one location to the other? We don't know. And this story adds really nothing to that. In any ways, it's even more perplexing. Out of all the hauntings around the world, this is the first one that I can recall that shoots a heat beam through a house, hot enough to sear your hand if you touch metal that's been near this area. Ghosts manifesting around temperatures hot and cold. Usually it's cold. They're draining the heat out of the area to gain energy. We think, right? These are all suppositions. These are all theories. The reason why rooms get cold when ghosts show up is because they're actually draining the room of energy to manifest. However, there are a very few places, it's a handful, there's not many of them at all, where when the ghost shows up, the room gets hotter. Like, I might have come across 4. I remember I was shocked the first time I came across one, and it was like 2 years ago, doing this show, where the room got hotter when the ghost showed up. It's almost always the other way. We don't know. We don't know. And I love this story because, again, you have, 1, it's family bonding time. But 2, you have these guys who are trying to figure out what could be causing this. And they don't even really think it's paranormal for a bulk of it. It's not really to the end. When John really goes, oh, I totally forgot about this. And again, see, that's the thing. You go, how do you forget such a monumental ghost story? I do it. When you have encounters, especially when you're 11, especially when you go, maybe that was just my imagination. Maybe I was just being a big crybaby. He didn't put it together that the place that they're puzzling over on the first floor was directly connected. Maybe, we don't know, but might have been directly connected to the ghostly vision he saw for just a second down in the basement. They're trying to solve this mystery. They're not thinking paranormal, but then at the end, the answer could be paranormal. Or the answer could be scientific. It could be measurable. It could be repeatable. It could truly be a scientific answer to this, with a little bit of the paranormal thrown in. What did the miner see as he was running full speed away from something? We don't know. What was causing the heat beam? We don't know. Was the ghost trapped there? Was the ghost manifesting the heat beam? Did the beam manifest the ghost? We don't know. But it's a story of a father and a son coming together trying to solve a mystery, and instead they stumble upon another, even more perplexing mystery. What happens to us after we die? First, they wanted to figure out why this room, why this single place in this house was so hot. And instead, they were faced with the question none of us know the answer to. What happens to us after we die? And that's a question that we don't know the answer to yet. But we'll all know the answer to that question sooner or later. DeadRabbitRadio@gmail.com is going to be our email address. You can also hit us up at Facebook.com/DeadRabbitRadio. TikTok is @DeadRabbitRadio. Dead Rabbit Radio is the daily paranormal, conspiracy, and true crime podcast. You don't have to listen to it every day, but I'm so glad you listened to it today. Have a great day.